Hey, what's up, truth seekers? So now that the election is over, and even though I consider myself a reluctant Trumper as opposed to a never Trumper, I expected the early signs of Trump derangement syndrome. I have to admit, the aftermath of the election has been a humorous and enlightening, teachable moment. So I have some observations, some scattered thoughts that I want to share. I'm old enough to remember in '08 when people were crying, fainting, kneeling at the altar of Obama's Greek structure. The country had unified to elect a grossly unqualified radical organizer who was the love child of an alcoholic loser on an education visa who abandoned most of his children before killing an innocent person while driving drunk, and a white silver spoon cray-cray named Stanley since her father didn't want a daughter. You can't make this stuff up. And please pay no attention to the man with a confused sense of identity who chooses poor role models. Just make him president already. It's 2016. Love trumps hate. Anyway, this was something to celebrate, I guess, because all the people that weren't sure if they were actually racist or not could prove they weren't finally, and we'd be a post-racist America. The planet would start to heal, and the sea levels would stop rising, and stuff. Looking back, it's hilariously foolish that anyone took this seriously. It's a carefully crafted fictional euphoria, completely detached with reality. Hold on to that thought, because it brings me to today. So Donald Trump won the election over Hillary Clinton and gave Democrats their worst electoral college defeat since Michael Dukakis. He literally had the word caucus in his name. I mean, that's probably why they picked him. Recovering from the 48/49 state shellacking that Reagan imposed on the Democrat Party was no easy job. And Michael tried to regain voter favor and suck much of that caucus back for the Democrats. But his efforts were limp, and what remained of his small caucus was pretty much too embarrassing to talk about. It's no mystery why this guy hasn't been seen until just recently he popped up to complain about how federalism actually works through the Electoral College. Now, he's not the only communist/radical leftist that's upset about the Electoral College, making it possible that large leftist urban areas don't impose their rule and their will on the rest of the country. Now, gone are the days of kumbaya and crying in the streets when our biggest obstacle to love Trump's hate is someone saying that I hope he fails on the radio. Nowadays, trumping hate actually takes a considerable amount of physical assault, property damage, and arson, which is ironic. We've gone from fictional euphoria to actual paranoia. So the question is why? What is the root cause of so many deluded and misguided humans behaving badly while wearing the mantle of love trumps hate? Why do we need safe spaces? And what happens to the brains of those who inhale and become addicted to the fumes of safety? I think one of the best examples of this was actually the recent incident with GrubHub CEO Matt Maloney, turning his company into a veritable safe space. Imagine going to work on November 9th and seeing an email from your CEO. And you think, am I getting a raise, a day off, a promotion? Am I fired? Are we having catered lunch, free swag? What is it? Instead, you get a letter about trying to, quote, make sense of the election. In the freest and most prosperous country to ever exist on planet Earth, in a democratic election, your CEO wants to help you make sense of the election. Thanks, bro. Ignore for the moment that there are studies that CEOs are 4 times likelier to be psychopaths than regular people. And in my experience, that's a low estimate. Consider how paranoid, deluded, or self-unaware you have to be to convey the message that GrubHub doesn't want Donald as president, and they certainly do not tolerate hateful, intolerant people at their company. And rather than hatefully tolerate the hatefully intolerant, they've served them up a peaceful warning. Leave voluntarily or else. I believe it was the book Liberal Fascism where I first read about the harm of psychological warfare in politics being more damaging than physical harm. I'll give you an example. This man was beaten. You probably saw this on the news.
You voted Trump! You voted Trump! Oh, yeah! Yeah, he voted Trump!
She been still
Yeah!
Oh, y'all vote. I gotta do that to her. Damn.
Beat his ass!
Don't vote Trump.
Don't vote Trump! Don't vote Trump!
Yeah, this shit didn't it. Still a split.
So prejudice is defined as a preconceived notion that's not based on any reason or evidence. But I once heard an evolutionary biologist say that prejudice is a survival instinct, right? In this case, there's a justifiable prejudice this person will hold for a long time about certain types of people who vote for certain types of candidates. Is there not? And in terms of persuasion, how persuasive is assault, property damage, and arson? What people look at this and say, yes, I want to be associated with those people. And in that vein, why hasn't Hillary Clinton come out and condemned these actions? I mean, she might eventually, but I believe it's because this is radical behavior. And there's a radical party that supports it and does not condemn it when it happens. Now, going back to the person reading this email, the average Joe regular employee, how persuaded are they by this? They're not worried about cuts and bruises. It's expressing their opinion and sharing their views that makes them fearful. And they're shamed into silence for fear of retribution, termination, loss of present and future earning power. I mean, imagine being passed over, knowing you could be passed over for promotion or advanced opportunities inside the company because of biases held by your employer. If the crime we're seeing in the streets is blue-collar crime, this is the white-collar version of love trumps hate hooliganism. I mean, the letter says GrubHub will fight for your dignity and your right to make a better life for yourself and your family here in the United States. That's sweet. But their first action is to kick anyone out who holds and shares different opinions, lifestyles, or beliefs, which results in neither dignity or a better life for yourself or your family in the United States. This is liberal logic, fighting for the greater good by sacrificing the plebes who act like speed bumps on the road to utopia. Why do I think white-collar crime is worse? The fools on the streets are a mix of professional protesters, the mentally unstable, Bernie Sanders voters, college students, and that probably covers it. Society doesn't set high expectations for any of these people, while we do more in the wasted human potential. A CEO of a $3 billion company is something else entirely. For how much we talk of the temperament of the president, it's because in the real world this matters a lot. Let's say you're the CEO of a $3 billion publicly traded company. You're responsible for the company trajectory, its employees, its stock, its reputation, its investors, its future. How stupid, deluded, and infantile do you have to be to open the company up to discrimination, unlawful termination, intimidation, hostile workplace litigation, and a public boycott? How self-unaware do you have to be to not know what will happen if your childish post-election drunk dial is shown to the world? This is what liberal indoctrination can do to an otherwise intelligent, ambitious individual. It prevents him from seeing that his irrational fear of hateful intolerance has begotten actual hateful intolerance. He's accusing Trump of a Minority Report pre-crime while holding a red ball that's inscribed with his own name. Now, Matt said that the message was misconstrued, which is the progressive playbook when you step in it. If you've ever watched the show Cheaters, you know that people can get caught on video doing something they're not supposed to be doing and deny it's them.
Just hanging out with a friend and still denies doing anything wrong. She alleges that Cheater's producers hired a look-alike to make it appear that she was engaging in the lewd activities.
That ain't me. That ain't me. Now, this appears to be the rule book for progressives who do something really stupid, saying sorry that everyone else has misunderstood me. I'm sorry that you didn't get what I was trying to say. It's so weak. It's so transparent. Colbert did it when his special snowflakes turned on him after he sent out a racist tweet. Hillary did it when she got people killed. Woody Allen did it when he raped a minor. Say you're misunderstood, add in that you aren't perfect for bonus points, and wait for it to blow over. Now here's the rub. You could argue he was misconstrued, but his format is very similar to another brain-dead liberal millennial progressive's pitch, which I did a video on. His name's Casey Neistat. He postured about his personal position, and then he ended it with a call to action. Check out his pseudo-apology. To the contrary, the message of the email is that we do not tolerate discriminatory activity or hateful commentary in the workplace, and that we will stand up for our employees. Against what invisible force, Matt? Against what perceived injustice? What paranoid delusion do we need to be protected against? What you did in your email was imply an actual threat as a protection against an imaginary one. The irony here is that Matt was dying to make GrubHub a safe space. If the roles were reversed, safe space SJWs would be filing lawsuits, forcing him to go to counseling and sensitivity training. Instead, he's learning the hard lesson that Target, Starbucks, Budweiser, the NFL, and countless other companies have made, that most people don't share your progressive bias. They don't share your irrational paranoias. They don't appreciate having you treat them like children. He said in his misconstrue/pseudo-apology that 20% of his employees thanked him for the letter. Of course, I wouldn't have bragged about this since about 20% of the company identifies as progressive. That's like McDonald's coming out with the pineapple burger and saying, hey, 2 out of 10 people didn't say they hated it. Make sure to share that at your next board of directors meeting, Matt, and put a good word in for me if they're looking for a new CEO who has a little more foresight. Also, make sure you have your board quiz you on your objective. Most progressive policies are judged on intent, not on results. So in the aftermath of this PR disaster, as they tally the results of lost revenue, lost customers, stock dive, And when they're scrambling to limit the damage, which might cost you your job, make sure you have a really good answer to the question, what in the oh hell yeah were you trying to accomplish? Now, I want to close by going back to the book that I referenced briefly by Jonah Goldberg called Liberal Fascism. Now, this is a book that I read at the early stages of my own political odyssey. And I remember at the time it came out that Jonah Goldberg was on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart to talk about it. And this episode of The Daily Show got so hacked up that they actually had to post the entire thing online because it was obvious that they were either hiding something or protecting John, or it just didn't look good. So, John's stated problem in a nutshell was that he didn't like the book's title or its cover. And his joke got echoed all over the web, radio, and TV by other critics, saying that you actually can judge this book by its cover. Now, like most smug progressive non-intellectuals who aggressively thrust the unearned in unearned moral superiority, the punchline was actually on John. Here's a quote from Jonah after the interview was over and this whole fiasco started. Quote, "I tried to explain for those whose feelings were so hurt that they didn't even crack the spine," safe space, that the title liberal fascism comes from a speech delivered by H.G. Wells, who was one of the most important and influential progressive and socialist intellectuals of the 20th century. Jonah appropriated the title. He wanted to brand liberalism as liberal fascism and even enlightened Nazism. He believed these terms best described his own political views, views that deeply inform American progressivism and New Deal liberalism. As for Smiley Face, that's a reference to comedian and social commentator George Carlin, who explained on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher.
George, I think do you know what fascism is?
Fascism,
you know what fascism
when it comes
is?
to America,
You know what Nazis are?
Wait,
You
sir.
know what
When
Nazis
fascism
are? You know
comes
what
to America, it
fascists
will
are?
not be in brown and black shirts. It will not be with jackboots. It will be Nike sneakers and smiley shirts. Smiley.
So I think Carlin nailed it here. I mean, what's more smiley than saying we're going to fight for your dignity and your right to make a better life for yourself and your family here in the United States? Unless you voted for Trump, then GTFO. Now, the true test of progressives and socialists is whether they're willing to live by the same ideas, laws, and conditions they're so willing to oppose on others. So since Maloney have had a thinly veiled threat to everyone in his company that didn't agree with him, I think he should actually be the first one to turn in his resignation. He can say his words were misconstrued, but the intentions certainly were not. Unfortunately, like other progressives who make false promises because of the effects of liberal lunacy on their brain and on their psyche, we're probably just going to shrug this off, forget it ever happened, and just hope that somehow people observe these mistakes and don't repeat them in the future.
Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Hell yeah!
But I'm a big fan of money. I like it. I use it. I have a little. I keep it in a jar on top of my refrigerator. I'd like to put more in that jar. That's where you come in.